Thanks, Brittany. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here with us today. My name is Jasmine Henderson, and we're excited to present Beyond the Buzzword, identifying and addressing different types of burnout. On the next slide, we'll talk about what we're covering today. First, we'll define what burnout is, both clinically and in real world terms. Then we'll dive into the different types of burnout with specific examples. We'll explore some common signs and symptoms to help you recognize burnout in yourself and in others. After that, we'll engage in a brief group discussion so we can learn from each other's experiences. And finally, we'll wrap up with key takeaways, a call to action, and share some helpful resources that you can use moving forward. Our goal is to leave you with practical tools, share insight, and a renewed sense of how to care for yourself and your colleagues in a demanding work environment. In higher education, we often hear the term burnout, but what does it really mean? By definition, burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged and excessive stress. You might notice it as a general sense of depletion or reduced performance or detachment from your work. To further explain, burnout is when your brain and your body are tired of being on all of the time. You start feeling like your energy is drained, you lose motivation, and even the things you care about deeply stop, even the things that you care about deeply stop bringing you joy. So some common signs could be persistent fatigue, even if you've gotten more sleep, irritability, and trouble focusing. And now I'm going to pass it on to Kimberlie, who's going to talk about some of the different types of burnout.
Thank you, Jasmine, and good afternoon to everyone. So I want to take a moment to discuss the different types of burnout. Now, it's important to note that burnout doesn't always look the same, and it can show up in many areas of our life. So here are a few key types of characteristics that can be found and for you to be aware of. Now, we will provide a little bit more of information on each of these burnouts as we continue with our presentation. But right now, I just want to give you, again, some of those key characteristics. So first and foremost, up on the list, we have the emotional burnout. And this is characterized by mental exhaustion from prolonged stress. Then we have social burnout, which is the feeling of being overwhelmed by a lot of our interpersonal relationships. Caregiver burnout is some of those key characteristics are more so focused on or exhaustion on caring for others. And that could be in a professional sense as well as in a personal sense. Next up, we have our workplace burnout. I think maybe raise your hand in the chat. All of us can attest to having experienced that, or maybe even currently experiencing that right now. From some of our conferences earlier, I think it indicated that about 91% people are currently experiencing workplace burnout. So I think that's one we commonly are aware of, but it's job related, and there's a lot of feelings of fatigue and disengagement with that particular type of burnout. Now, next up, we have a creative burnout. So that really transpires from inspiration depletion and maybe on particular artistic blocks. And then lastly, chronic illness burnout, and that stems from fatigue from managing ongoing health conditions. Now, by recognizing these types of burnout that you're experiencing, it's part of that first step in addressing this, and that's how you can move forward into hopefully alleviating a lot of those symptoms. So, Brittany, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more about caregiver burnout and some of its unique challenges. Now, caregiver burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion, and it's caused by the prolonged and overwhelming stress for caring for others. And it often leads to feelings, again, like fatigue, maybe frustration, maybe you might find yourself feeling hopeless or helpless. And it impacts both the caregiver's well being and their ability to provide ongoing care. Now, I want to take a look at some of the common characteristics, again, that go along with caregiver burnout. And first on the list is the role reversal. Now, role reversal, this most commonly occurs when you're dealing with a caregiver who's giving personal caregiving, so maybe not professional. Um, because they're often caring for maybe an aging parent or a loved one with declining health. And so it can create a sense of emotional whiplash, right? So maybe you're caretaking for your parent and that role has been reversed, where your whole life they've been caring for you and now you're having to care for them. And so it's not uncommon for people to experience a lot of overwhelming feelings during this time because that relationship dynamic is really changing and switching. And so you may find yourself parenting your parent, right? And then that shift of role can be confusing, it can be overwhelming, and it's often deeply emotional for that caregiver. Now, next characteristic I want to talk about is the constant decision making, right? So because the caregiver is often making nonstop decisions, maybe from medical appointments, maybe they have to help with all the medications, the daily finances, the day-to-day routine, right? I don't know about you, I have a hard time caregiving for myself sometimes, and then my own family system, my son, and so having that caregiving responsibility where now you're making decisions for others, it could become very mentally heavy and it rarely lets up, right? You're not really having a lot of time to yourself or some of your other relationships in your life that you already naturally occur with. So the next one I want to talk about is the financial strain. Now, I want to look at that number on that PowerPoint right there, and it's 43.5 million individuals indicated within the last year alone that they have been providing unpaid, yes, you heard that right, unpaid caregiving to a loved one, family member, or close personal relationship, right? And so, as you can imagine, that can cause a huge financial strain. So many of these caregivers, they might be experiencing something like reduced work hours. They might have to take unpaid leave, or sometimes in some cases, pause their careers entirely to be there for someone else. So that can lead to financial hardship, adding kind of another layer of stress on top of already the emotional and physical weight that that caregiver is also experiencing. Last, this is probably honestly from my experience and background, one of the most commonly expressed um, characteristics towards caregiving would be that guilt and self-doubt. So maybe despite this individual giving everything, many caregivers still feel like it's not enough, right? Because you're, again, one, not only taking care of and being in charge of your own self and well-being, you have other family relations, maybe friends, maybe you have children, you have your colleagues' relationships. Well, now you have to also caregive for someone else. And so you're kind of, it's like pouring from a cup, right? You're pouring and pouring and pouring into others, and you might become depleted. So they often sometimes indicate that they don't feel like they're doing enough, like they're kind of struggling. So that guilt, that second guessing, that sense of failure, these are some common characteristics that a caregiver might be feeling during these times. And so even though they're doing their absolute best, it's not always that's not always what we take from that. We might feel a lot of different varying emotions. So these emotions are normal, but they can be incredibly isolating. And so while all caregiving burnout deserves its recognition, what's really important is having compassion for others and really building that support system. Because honestly, these challenges are really real and the need for especially creating boundaries is incredibly important. And then also resting and finding a good support system. So community. Now we're going to go to that next slide if you don't mind, please. Thank you so much. Now, I want to kind of discuss the overlap of caregiver, emotional, and social burnout. So, all three of these types of burnouts, they're really deeply interconnected. Caregiver burnout, emotional burnout, and social burnout, they aren't separate experiences, right? So, you might be experiencing one or a number of them, right? Simultaneously. They don't have to be separate. And so, they often actually overlap and they also reinforce each other in some pretty powerful ways. But before I kind of get into some of those overlaps, I kind of want to go briefly over these three types of burnout real quickly. So again, we just discussed our caregiver burnout. That's at the center, right? It's exhaustion from constantly giving care to support others. It's not limited again to professional caregivers or it's also could be personal caregivers, such as caregiving for a parent or colleagues, friends, family, and it can affect anyone. So anyone who takes on that supportive role, they can experience that caregiver burnout. Next is that emotional burnout. Now, this is when it's pretty much stems from mental exhaustion that's prolonged. And you might feel like your resources are being depleted, right? You're pouring maybe from an empty cup. And it could be that nothing specifically triggers you on certain days, but often this is going to show up in ways of like irritability, numbness. Maybe you're just feeling overall checked out. And so those are some of those characteristics for emotional burnout. Lastly, we got our social burnout. Now, social burnout is feeling overwhelmed from our interpersonal relationships. So it kind of is like when the idea of socializing feels really, really draining and it doesn't energize you any longer. And so that can include some of our work relationships, maybe our personal obligations, even virtual interactions. I don't know about you, but post COVID, I feel like everything is online. And I've definitely experienced some social burnout where I've definitely wanted to hope that a lot of things could be an email. But while all three of these types of burnout have different focuses, I think it's important to note that some of them have the same root causes, right? So they can often, again, feed into one another, creating that loop. So I want to look what's happening beneath the surface, and I want to talk about some of that overlap. And so as you can see on the PowerPoint, some of those shared causes and effects. So for emotional exhaustion, this is a foundation that can be found in all three of these types of burnouts, especially when you're constantly under stress, maybe carrying emotional loads, not resting. And then the burnout becomes inevitable at that point. Another key characteristic that they share is compassion fatigue. Now, obviously, we've talked about how the caregivers can feel this intensely, but emotional and social burnout, they also focus and they are also a form of emotional labor, right? So you're constantly having to show up for others, that could take a toll. Now, lack of boundaries. Again, I noted that this one, to be honest, is one of the most important ones. And it can affect all types of burnout. And it's usually a key characteristic for all the ones that we've mentioned already. And so maybe you might find yourself saying yes too often, overcommitting, or feeling responsible for everyone. And those are some of those characteristics. Next, we have social withdrawal. Now, obviously, as burnout deepens, the energy to connect with others fades. And so people might find themselves isolating. They might find themselves being disinterested in normal day-to-day things, and also feeling depleted. Now, the last common key characteristic that all three of these overlap in is mental and physical strain. Now, burnout doesn't just affect our mood, and that's very important to note because it does impact actually our bodies as well. It can cause issues like sleep issues, headaches. Maybe you're experiencing a lower immunity. You might even actually experience chronic health conditions if these burnouts are extended and excessive, right? But I want to go to I want to take a moment just to really kind of talk about a personal way that burnouts affect me because I think it's important. We hear all these things and we go to these different seminars talking about it, but sometimes a little bit of that personal touch really lets us see what it can look like in real life. So for me, my personal burnout that I really experienced that was pretty difficult within the last couple of years was caregiver burnout, and why I wanted to present on this one, to be honest. So during COVID, my husband and I became new parents, and around that same time, he suffered a grave injury, and it left him really unable to walk for about a year and a half. And so, on top of COVID, which was already chaotic for most of us, right? And we were already experiencing a lot of emotional, mental, and physical depletion because of all the uncertainty. I became a full-time caregiver with our newborn son and also trying to keep up with work. I was in my first year here at UCR. So as you can imagine, I felt extremely burnt out and really overwhelmed. And so um, a lot of the caregiver burnout mixed with the emotional and social burnout, they kind of overlapped for me, right? It created this constant feeling of exhaustion and feeling of overwhelm for me. And it wasn't uncommon. I knew because of my background that these things can be interconnected. They can kind of feed off of one another. Because again, like we discussed, they share a lot of the same common characteristics. So I was experiencing the social burnout, even though I had really little interaction because we were in COVID and trying to isolate and everything was online. I still felt that burnout. Like Zoom calls started becoming really draining for me because I was so overextended emotionally and physically in my caregiving role. And even though I'm pretty, I would say, extroverted, I had a hard time enjoying a lot of the things that I love. And emotionally, I started experiencing that burnout because for me, I was at my all-time lowest. I was unable to really fill my own cup, right? And so all the new duties of motherhood, caretaking for my husband, and then going through COVID, I really started experiencing how the caregiver burnout really was overlapping with that social and emotional burnout. And so honestly, for me, I knew I had to take some type of proactive step because I really couldn't keep living like that. Um, and so I had to kind of find new ways during COVID to help myself. So for me, I started walking about an hour a day. That's excessive. I'm not saying we all have to do that, but I was trying to walk it about an hour a day just so that I can get outside, just so that I can help um, alleviate some of that excessive stress. I started leaning on a support system that used to be able to be in person, but now because of COVID, I had to find other ways. So maybe calling family members Zoom, and staying connected to them as much as possible so that I can share in some of that load that I was experiencing. So most importantly, I had to take some of those small steps, especially in the realms of setting boundaries, learning when to say no because I was so inundated and overwhelmed, um, to really help combat this. And I want to encourage you guys that it does take time. It doesn't happen overnight, but small steps can really help and alleviate some of these feelings. But I can talk about that all day, so I'm gonna pass it on over to Jasmine, who's gonna talk about some of the other burnouts that you can experience.
Thanks, Kimberly. So I want to focus on understanding mental, creative, and workplace burnout. When we're talking about mental burnout, it's all about cognitive exhaustion. So it's when you've been solving problems, helping others, and making decisions nonstop, and your brain just doesn't want to keep going. Um, Creative burnout hits when your work requires innovation and emotional energy, but you no longer feel inspired. And workplace burnout is probably the most familiar to us all. It's when your job, whether it's teaching, advising, programming, or administration, feels overwhelming and never ending. On the next slide, I'm going to talk about how these overlap. Mental burnout is kind of like that umbrella, the overarching um, type of burnout. So in the way that they overlap, mental fatigue can make it impossible for you to be creative. Losing your creative passion can feed into workplace detachment. When all three are happening at once, it becomes very hard to focus or function and let alone thrive. And with this, I want to give you guys a personal story about myself and how I've experienced that firsthand. Similar to Kimberly, I have a background in mental health as well. And although, we have this background, we go through this stuff as well. And so there was a time where I was leading support groups for a college campus. I was creating mental health art like coloring books and focusing on my empowerment and healing work. And I was working full time as an academic advisor, all roles that I love deeply. But along the way, I stopped feeling like myself. I was exhausted all of the time. I had trouble focusing during sessions, and I started feeling disconnected from my students. Um, and during the sessions, the student run sessions, and I started feeling overwhelmed and just having trouble focusing. My in my creative work and from my purpose. I was experiencing mental burnout. My brain was foggy, I was overloaded, then became then came my creative burnout. My art, which was an outlet for me to relieve stress and to just have fun and express myself, started feeling like a chore. And then with workplace burnout, um, I had these groups to run, but it became another thing to do on my to-do list, and I began to dread it. So I had to recognize those signs as the first step. And I gave myself permission to step back, which was very hard to do. I took breaks. I noticed that I wasn't doing that before. I was really overworking myself or overextending. I began to lean on my support system, because what I realized was I was trying to do all of these things on my own. And then I reconnected with the reason I began this work in the first place, and that was really to create healing spaces for others and myself. So slowly I began to rebuild my wellness, and with it my ability to serve others. So what I really want to say to you guys today is that burnout does not mean you're not good at what you do. It does not mean you do not care. It simply means that you're human. And the most powerful thing we can do for ourselves and for students is to notice the signs early, to choose to protect our well being. And you deserve care as much as the people that you support. So, next, I'm going to hand it over to Hung as we continue to discuss the different types of burnout.
Thank you, Jasmine. So I will be discussing something that's often unspoken, yet profoundly impacts our lives: chronic illness burnout. It's a critical topic because it affects so many of us, and understanding it is a first step towards managing it. So what exactly is chronic illness burnout? It's more than just being tired. Chronic illness burnout is a state of exhaustion caused by the constant stress of managing a long-term health condition, and at the same time managing your workload and your personal life as well. It is a cumulative effect that can significantly impact our quality of life. So let's think about that for a second. Using the chat box or using the react button on the bottom of the toolbar of your Zoom, raise your hand, or in the chat box, how many of us are managing one or more health conditions? I'll be more vulnerable with everyone. I myself is definitely managing at least two or more at this present moment. Right. So there's a few of us are managing one or more health conditions. And if you're open to sharing in the chat, what has been your experience like with managing those health conditions along with every other responsibility in your day-to-day? Yes, Erica, frustrating, exhausting, very hard, absolutely. Overwhelming, never ending. Yes, it feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Great. Yes, all the responses in the chat box do correlate what many of us feel when managing that chronic illness burnout. Sharon, you're right. Difficult, but what choice do we have? And that in a part can be very frustrating and very time consuming and debilitating, because at this point we're left with, what else can we have? What else is out there that can help support me and hopefully heal me from the health condition, or help me manage some of that pain that is consistently being bombarded in my body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So definitely great responses. Absolutely. All those symptoms everyone is experiencing is what many of us experience, not just with chronic illness. It can be also other types of burnout as well, too. So next slide, please. And so for those living with health conditions, managing them can be very overwhelming. Let's take a look at the image on this slide. It is a chronic pain stress cycle that many of us go through. In a chat box or using the react button, how many of us looking at the cycle experience this? Almost a never-ending circle of pain, exhaustion, feeling better for about a minute, and then back to pain, exhaustion, over and over again. Yes, absolutely. Chronic illnesses, unlike temporary ailments, persist over a long period of time and can significantly impact a person's life. One of the most difficult aspects is unpredictability. Individuals with chronic conditions often experience flare-ups or fluctuations in their symptoms. This can mean canceling plans at the last minute, struggling to maintain a consistent work schedule, and constantly adjusting to their body's changing needs. This unpredictability inevitably leads to exhaustion, both physically and emotional. Another major challenge is that many chronic illnesses are invisible. From the outside, someone may look fine, but internally, they could be battling debilitating pain, fatigue, or a host of other symptoms. This lack of visible evidence can lead to invalidation from others who may not understand, as the individual feels increasingly disconnected from those who don't understand or grasp the reality. The core of the struggle lies in the persistent symptoms themselves. This may include chronic pain, overwhelming fatigue, weakness, and brain fog, which impacts cognitive function, making it difficult to concentrate, remember things, or even articulating your thoughts. Imagine trying to navigate your daily life while constantly feeling like you're wading through mud. Living with a chronic illness often brings about a sense of grief and loss of the health they once had, loss of the abilities they took for granted, and loss of the normal life that we envisioned. This grief is real and needs to be acknowledged both by the individual and the support network. It is also not surprising that chronic illness can also increase the risk of depression and anxiety. The constant struggle with symptoms, the limitations imposed by the illness, and the emotional toll can lead to feelings of hopelessness and worry. It's crucial for individuals with chronic illness to have access to mental health support as well. Sadly, many people with chronic illness do face stigma. They may encounter judgment or discrimination due to their illness, facing disbelief or accusations of faking their symptoms. This stigma only adds to their burden and makes it even harder for us to cope. Finally, chronic illness can strain relationships. Family and friends may struggle to understand the change and limitations, leading to frustration and conflict. Adjustments are necessary to both the individual and their loved ones, which may require open communication, being empathetic, and being flexible and willingness to adapt to the change. Living with chronic illness, such as with any other type of burnout, is a marathon, not a sprint. Many times over, it may feel like there is no light at the end of the tunnel, that it is a never-ending marathon, that at the end of the day, it will not stop. Burnout is real and a valid experience. By understanding its signs and symptoms and implementing these strategies, we can learn to manage it, prioritize our well-being, and live a fuller, more meaningful lives. Remember, for those who are experiencing chronic illnesses or other types of burnout, you are not alone. There is a strong support network here at UC Riverside. And being vulnerable is a sign of strength, not a weakness. And with that, I do also want to share a personal story of myself struggling with my chronic illnesses. A few years ago, I started experiencing debilitating back pain, muscle spasms. It got to the point where I would crawl to the restroom. My wife would have to help me take a shower. Help me dry myself. Wash my body. For someone who took pride in being a workout enthusiastic, being a forefront of health and wellness, who was proactive at 3:30 in the morning, waking up, going to the gym to working out from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., and then have my day structured and pre-planned and knowing that this is what it looks like and move forward with it. It really totally changed my life and my perspective. There was grief, the grief that I could not exercise anymore, the grief that I couldn't even move or walk, the grief that I can't even sit down at this present moment without feeling any pain or my back throbbing at me, telling me to get up and lay down. It was a struggle. Many times over, I thought, is this it? Will I be in a wheelchair next year? Do I need a walker? Will my wife, who also is my current caregiver at this point, is she going to have to quit her job and now be a full-time caregiver? Those were the scenarios that were running through my mind. And quite frankly, there was times when I thought, maybe this is it. I shouldn't be here no more. But thankfully, as I continue to learn more about the burnout and chronic illness, I learned to be more vulnerable, communicate that with my wife, being open to the support and the help that my beautiful wife provides to me, and sharing my vulnerabilities and my struggles with my colleagues, my manager, my workplace. To this day, I'm very thankful and very grateful that I have a strong support network within my division, a strong support system and network here on campus as well. Because for a while, I also struggled with imposter syndrome, thinking that if I walk on campus with a walking cane, if I don't look health and wellness anymore, will people say something? Will they judge me? Will they criticize, state that, how am I the wellness person with a walking cane? And quite frankly, that was very presumptuous of me. I do admit that, very presumptuous. Because when I did share my vulnerabilities, it was quite the opposite. There was a strong support network, empathetic, compassion. My own team, my management, my colleagues, they stepped up. They helped out to facilitate some of those in-person and virtual wellness events that I had while I was still struggling with my chronic illness. And so with that, I do leave with anyone who is struggling with these burnouts, with chronic illness, creativity, or any other types. If appropriate, and if you feel comfortable, share that with your family members, with your friends, with your colleagues. Is there opportunity for you to have some adjustments, but at the same time, acknowledge and be proactive, be an advocate of your health. Do the research. Now, I do respect, and with all respect to the medical community and the doctors, if it doesn't feel correct, ask questions. Be persistent with your physician. If your knee is hurting and all they want to do is provide you with medication, ask them for imaging. Go see a different specialist or a doctor if you need to, because it's those type of practices. Be an advocate. It will help you help manage your symptoms. Unfortunately for me, I waited too long. I wasn't an advocate in my early years. I trusted the doctors. And again, with respect to the medical community, unfortunately, there was a delay in my diagnosis. I now have permanent damage. So now my focus is on managing what I have available and it's able to move, and understanding that there are going to be activities. There are going to be situations that I will not be able to do or attend because of my limitations as well. And with that, I now pass it over to Kimberlie for the next slide.
Thank you to you both for sharing. Now, I want to go over and walk through some of the 5 universal strategies that can support anyone navigating burnout, no matter which type you may be experiencing or what you've heard today. Now, these practices are simple, but most importantly, they're powerful, right? And they're meant to be sustainable. Don't want to make something extremely difficult. If you're already experiencing burnout, you're less likely to put a whole bunch of stuff on your plate. So again, these things are meant to be sustainable and simple. First and foremost, the top of the list, guys, prioritizing rest. Now, rest it's foundational. It's foundational to helping with any of these burnouts, but not all rest is created the same, okay? Balance passive rest like sleep and downtime with active rest. And that active rest is kind of what looks like maybe taking a nature walk, light stretching, quiet reflection. But these activities are going to help you recharge, and they're also going to help you to be more restored in your energy in a healthy way, right? Now, next I want to talk about on the PowerPoint, you can see boundary setting. And I've already said this, but to me, boundary setting is probably the most important when dealing with any of the burnouts, but overall, just in general with well-being, right? Boundaries, they're important because burnout thrives when we're overextended. So setting boundaries, remember, it's not selfish, it's necessary. So protect your time and energy by saying no when you need to, or try saying things like, I can't commit to that right now, or start small. But you will notice a difference when you start creating that boundary one at a time, because it's going to help create some of that recovery for yourself and give you some space that you might need. Now, next is the mind-body connection. So our minds and our bodies are deeply linked, right? When we're disconnected, burnout can deepen. So simple practices like deep breathing, stretching, or short walks can help realign our nervous system. Again, you don't need to do a full workout, right? It could just be a few minutes of mindful moments, maybe a little bit of movement, a little bit of stretching, and this can help refresh you. Then we have social support. Now, social support, this is really important because isolation can make burnout feel even heavier, and you don't want to have to carry something alone, right? We often need community to feel connected and also to alleviate some of these symptoms. So reach out to someone you trust. Maybe it's a coworker, a friend, a mentor, or even maybe professional counseling, right? Peer support and validation from others can help you kind of feel seen again, and it helps you feel supported in these times of uncertainty. And lastly, I want to talk about reframing productivity. So, reframing, this one's especially important because in fast paced work environments, you got to let go of the idea of being busy. The idea of being busy meaning you're valuable, right? That those two don't need to coexist. You are valuable whether you're busy or not. So maybe shifting from busyness to sustainable balance is key because productivity isn't just about your output, it's about what's meaningful, manageable, and aligns with your capacity. Now, there's no one size fits all for the solution of burnout. These are universal strategies that are a great place to start. But the goal isn't to fix everything overnight. Like I said earlier, it can take time. But by building some of these daily habits that support your well being, it will help in the long term. And I want to go over to our next slide real quick, if you don't mind. Okie dokie. Now on this side, you're seeing some of the signs of burnout. Now we're going to keep this up when we go into our next part of our discussion. But some of these signs of burnout, as you can see, there are physical signs, emotional signs, and cognitive behavioral signs. So some of those physical signs might look like fatigue. It might look like constant muscle tension. Maybe you're experiencing sleep issues. Some of those cognitive behavioral signs will be maybe you're procrastinating, maybe you're having brain fog, you're unable to concentrate, maybe feeling disengaged during your normal meetings. And then we have emotional signs. Some of those are more of maybe loss of motivation, persistent anxiety, maybe irritability. But we're going to keep that up in just a moment. But first, we're going to go to our next slide. I'm going to let Hung talk us through about what's up next.
Thank you, Kimberlie. So moving forward, some key takeaways and calls to action. Now that we discussed burnout, the different types of burnout, what can you do to help manage your burnout? Now, these key takeaways and calls to action, they may not work for everyone. This right here is a good template, a blueprint, and each of us can use this and make it our own and personalize it. One, like everything else, such as goal setting, identify one action, one step you can do to manage that burnout. Is it setting that boundary, communicating with that colleague, that partner, or your loved one? Or is it just identifying what can you do as a self-care activity to help you prevent or manage some of those symptoms? Second, seek help. You are not alone. If you feel a need to talk to someone, a support group, please reach out to our colleagues, our coworkers, fellow staff members. Or you can always access our comp site, our faculty staff assistance program for those services. Or your medical insurance carriers also have their own behavioral and mental health services as well for their plan members. Small steps. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So take those small steps and understand that taking small steps each time could eventually help you prevent burnout in its whole entirety. And also to identify your type. Maybe the chronic illness burnout may not resonate as much as those experiencing caregiver and vice versa. Or it may so. Perhaps we're experiencing multiple types of burnout all at the same time, and it's overwhelming us to the point where we don't even know what to do at this point. So this is a great opportunity to really identify and see what will be best for you and what can you do to manage that burnout as well too. Next slide, please. So on the behalf of Kimberlie, Jasmine, and I, we want to thank you for attending our session, but before we leave, I would like to lead everyone in this Zoom room a short and very fun mobility session. So go and change to the next slide, please, Brittany, because there was also a resource page as well. But while you're doing so, everyone go ahead and sit towards the middle or the edge of your chair. Okay, I'll go ahead and position myself where you'll see me from the lateral view. We're going to do a modified cat-cow movement. For those who may not know what a cat-cow is, we're going to try to improve your spinal mobility. So while sitting on the edge of your chair or middle of your chair, place your hands on the top of your knee. Okay. From there, tuck your chin in and slowly round out your spine from your neck down to your lower back. As you do so, exhale. Then from there, we're going to extend your thoracic. So from here, bring your shoulders back, chest out. Extend your neck by looking up. Now at this point, imagine squeezing your shoulder blades in. Exhale. Let's repeat that movement 2 more times. Go ahead and concave in. Just flexing that spine, opening up those shoulder blades. Transition back to extension. Open up the chest, your shoulders. So one more time, same thing, concave in. And do the full extension. Now we established some spinal movement in that realm. Let's go ahead now and move next into a rotational movement. So hands across your chest, as so, crisscross them. Go ahead and rotate to the left as far as you can, and then rotate to the right as far as you can. Now perform that type of rotational movement, 20 repetitions at your own pace. And what we're going to try to do is try to open up the intervertebral disc, that little soft cushion-like substance in between our spine. Yes, let's get some blood flow in there. As you're doing this, try to feel your muscles. Are your obliques working? Do you feel those love handles working? The muscles in that area activating your obliques. Do you feel some movement in your lower back? Did you just crack your back? Okay, once you finish 20 repetitions, we are now going to do a scapular protraction retraction movement. This movement is designed to help increase activation in the postural muscles in the back of your body. So you place both hands, fully extend right in front of you, palms facing in. Make sure you're protracting or rounding out your shoulder blades. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and bring your arms back. As you do so, retract your shoulder blades and imagine a ball between your shoulder blades. You want to squeeze that ball as you bring your arms in. Let's hold that for a second and then extend your arms forward, round it out. And let's go ahead and retract, squeeze that shoulder blades in. Go and do that 4 more times. At your own pace, take your time with it. Really feel those muscles being activated. Feel that chest open up. Breathe in that air. Wow, it's an amazing feeling when you breathe in your air with your chest expanded versus your chest concave. Let's go and do 1 more repetition. Excellent. We will do 1 more mobility movement. I will face now in front of the camera because it's a better view. We will now move into a depression and elevation movement for your back. So both hands, raise them up in the air, as so. Now with this movement, you want to reach as high as you can. That's a elevation type of movement for your scapula, your shoulder blades. Then from here, what I want you to think about is then try to bring your whole arm down by bringing your shoulder blades down. And then from there, flex your elbows, bring your hands closer to the shoulder level of your body. So for those that like to work out or maybe familiar with some movement of exercises, this is very similar to a pull-up or what we call a lat pull-down. Now, the goal of this movement is to open up the shoulder blades in a motion that most of us typically do not do. I mean, in real life, how many of us are really doing pull-ups or lat pull-downs all day, every day, right? Definitely not ideal. I do not suggest that. Do not do pull-ups every single minute, on the hour, every single day. That will cause overtraining and then increase risk of another type of burnout, which we do not want to go through. Let's do a couple more repetitions and bring it down and then relax. Let's do 1 more mobility movement. It'll be for the neck now. So we got the shoulder blades up and moving. We have our upper back mobilized. Let's get some blood flow to the neck. Very simply, neck rotations. So go ahead and tuck your chin in by looking down, then look right, go and extend your neck, look up, down to the left, and back down again. And go and repeat that rotational movement about 5 times at your own pace. And once you reach that 5th rep, go ahead and reverse direction. for about 5 repetitions. Once you reach that 5th repetition, I want everyone to take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for about a couple of seconds, 1, 2, and just let it all out. And that concludes that nice little self-care activity for burnout. And now on the side right here are the resources. So if you're a Kaiser member, HealthNet member, or Anthem Blue Cross, please click on those links and you'll be able to access those behavioral and mental health services. ComPsych does provide 3 free sessions per issue every 6 months, and those sessions are eligible for members of your household. In addition, our faculty staff wellness website has a bunch of resources, an abundant amount of resources for every type of well-being pillar that you would like access to. And of course, most importantly, professional development. Our EOD does provide a list of phenomenal workshops in every type of topic in our UC Learning Management Center. So I do encourage anyone and everyone to access those links as well. Again, on behalf of Jasmine and Kimberly and I, we want to thank you for attending our workshop. We hope you found the information engaging and informative as well. Hope everyone enjoys the closing ceremony if you're headed over there at 2 o'clock. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the 3 of you for being so vulnerable and sharing your stories with us today. I do want to give a moment if anybody wants to ask a couple questions. Feel free to put it in the chat or in the Q&A. If not, I just want to say that I hope you all enjoyed this session today. Our goal is to keep the UCR Staff Conference 100% free to attend. So we couldn't do that without our generous support of our sponsors, UCR Staff Assembly, LEAD, UCR Human Resources and Employee and Organizational Development, and Schools First Credit Union. As a reminder, all the recordings will be up on the Staff Assembly YouTube channel. And just a few quick reminders, we do have our in-person closing ceremony for our UCR staff here at 2 o'clock. So you can go on over to the Alumni Center and meet us there. LEAD nominations for the executive board are now open. You can go to our website at lead.ucr.edu to get more information. Staff assembly elections will be open on April 14th, so keep that in mind. Just a quick plug to sign up for the UCR EOD listserv. And then we do have our Franklin Covey All Access Pass that we will be raffling off. If that's something you're interested in and want to pay for it, it is $395. And that will be going through December 31st. So lots to do. Thank you all for attending our conference. We couldn't do this without all of you. And thank you to all of our speakers. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.